They call me the woman who lives in spreadsheets. What they don't see is that each cell was a step away from being someone else's backup plan. Rain brushed against my apartment window in slow, irregular streaks, as if the sky itself was hesitating. I sat cross-legged on my worn gray sofa, laptop balanced on a throw pillow, 3 tabs open: housing, mortgage calculator, and my spreadsheet, the one no one else had ever seen. This wasn't a game of numbers. It was a map. 7 years' worth of habits turned into cells and formulas. Every skipped vacation, every cheap takeout order, every no I'd whispered when friends splurged. They lived here, color-coded and tucked into rows. I didn't need applause. I just needed the math to say what no one in my family ever did. You're enough. You're ready. A soft notification pinged in the corner of my screen. A calendar reminder for my viewing appointment next week. March 14th, Monroe. The house with the white shutters and the small porch that curved slightly, like it was shy. It wasn't big. It didn't need to be. It had light, a garden patch. Silence. Space that no one else could demand. I clicked into my savings summary and stared. My heart skipped. The numbers weren't close. They were clear. Final. I was no longer waiting for permission. Still, the habit lingered. I hesitated. I opened my text thread with Mom. Me, thinking about making a move, looking at a house near Monroe. Her reply came fast, like she'd been waiting. Make sure it has enough space. The kids will need room to play. The kids, not me. Not a question about why Monroe or what I needed. Just space. For Rachel. For the children. For the idea that I still existed to solve someone else's problem. I closed the thread. I remembered the first time I gave Rachel money. $8,000 from my emergency fund to cover a credit card bill she forgot to tell our parents about. I never told them either. It would have made her look bad. So I just transferred it, deleted the alert, and kept living like it never happened. That silence became expected, then demanded. My phone buzzed again, not from Mom this time, but Rachel. Mia's dance recital is next week. Could you maybe help with the costume? They need it early. There was no, how are you? No, what's going on in your world? Just another quiet withdrawal, like I was the family ATM with feelings muted. I locked the screen. I shifted back to the listing, the Monroe cottage. The porch had a swing. The backyard was just large enough for herbs and basil. It was exactly the size of my piece. Somewhere between closing tabs and sipping lukewarm tea, I clicked Save as Favorite. Then I went to my inbox and clicked on the confirmation from the realtor again, rereading it like a secret note passed under a table. In my planner, I scribbled one sentence. Ask for nothing, expect nothing, choose yourself. I didn't need a celebration. I didn't need the family dinner where people pretended to listen while Rachel's voice overran the room and Mom silently refilled her wine glass whenever I spoke. I needed a porch, a quiet morning, and walls that didn't carry the echoes of obligation. Rain turned heavier, drumming now. I stood, stretched, and reached for the manila folder where I kept my housing documents. My fingers brushed against the corner of an old envelope, the one with my first paycheck from 7 years ago. I used to think I'd save that for something big. Turns out, that something wasn't a wedding or a vacation. It was silence. It was space. It was a house where no one else had a key. An automated email slid into my inbox. March 14th. Viewing confirmed. 12:30 p.m. I stared at it. This one's mine. When someone says, do it for the family, I've learned to check if they mean love or ownership. The scent of garlic bread clung to the air like a memory I never quite wanted to recall. My mother moved through the kitchen with practiced rhythm, humming a hymn under her breath as if the holiness of the song might cleanse what none of us dared say out loud. Rachel was already at the table, laughing too loudly at something Joel muttered about parking. Mia and Caleb ran barefoot through the hallway, leaving a trail of sock fuzz and crayon wrappers in their wake. I stood in the doorway, coat still on, gripping a bottle of wine I knew would be too dry for my mother's taste. But I brought it anyway because I still showed up. I shouldn't have. The table was already set, and so was the trap. I sat down and immediately noticed the printouts. Real estate listings, glossy pages, colorful circles around backyard features and square footage. One had a handwritten note from Mom in cursive, "Great school district, room for a trampoline." I blinked. "We were just looking at some houses," Rachel said with feigned casualness, pouring orange juice like this was brunch with a friend. "Look, this one's in Cedar Ridge. 4 bedrooms, huge backyard. Close to my work and Caleb's preschool." It was said like a verdict. No room for negotiation, no space for refusal. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk in the dark, the only light coming from the glow of my screen. I opened the voice memo file and pressed play. The recording crackled to life. Joel's voice, then Rachel's, then my mother's smooth, deliberate sentence. "Don't expect to be treated as part of this family." My dream home photo sat beside the laptop. Monroe, the porch, the quiet, the garden. My eyes didn't water. My throat didn't tighten. Just one sharp, clear thought burned its way through me. This house they wanted? It was never meant for me. That night, Claire replays the audio while looking at her dream home's photo. Her face hardens. When the whole room is following a script, silence is the loudest rebellion. The kitchen smelled the same as always. Roasted garlic, rosemary chicken. The faint undertone of whatever synthetic detergent Mom still insisted on using for the tablecloth. Same wine, same mismatched chairs, same rhythm to the conversations. Rachel dominating with anecdotes about Mia's school project, Joel chiming in just enough to seem engaged, Mom refilling everyone's glasses before hers was even half empty, and me, sitting quietly, smiling when appropriate, laughing on cue. But I wasn't playing the same part this time. I brought my own lines. Rachel was midway through a story about how hard it was to find good preschool programs when she suddenly turned to me. "You've been quiet tonight," she said, half laughing. "Still thinking about the house on Maple Street?" I put my fork down gently. "Actually, no." Mom glanced up. Her hand froze above the breadbasket. "I already bought a house," I said, voice calm, steady. No apology. The room paused as if someone had hit mute. Rachel blinked. "Wait, you mean you made an offer on Maple Street?" "No." I folded my hands in my lap. "I signed the papers last Thursday. It's in Monroe. 2 bedrooms. Quiet." Joel shifted in his seat. Harold set his fork down like it weighed more than it did. Mom's eyes narrowed, calculating. Rachel's jaw opened before her voice caught up. You bought something already?" Her voice pitched upward, brittle. "Without even talking to us?" There was nothing to discuss. I shrugged lightly. "It's my money. My name on the deed. But Mom's been talking to realtors. We had a list of places, houses with actual family space." "I'm not starting a family," I said, letting each word land like a stone. "Not with anyone. Not for anyone." Rachel's face flushed. "But the kids. We thought—" "You thought wrong," I cut in. "You didn't ask. You just planned." Deborah exhaled sharply through her nose, a sound I'd grown up recognizing. Her warning bell. "Claire, you've always been the practical one. You don't do things impulsively. This wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. Every paycheck, every choice. I've been planning for 7 years, just not for you." She flinched like I'd cursed at her. Rachel looked stunned, then angry. "You said you wanted a home. We helped. We researched. No, you selected options for yourselves and assumed I'd hand over the keys." Joel raised his hands, trying to play peacekeeper. "We just thought it made sense, Claire. You've got the job, no student loans. Rachel's got the kids, and it's tight in that apartment." And somehow, all of that justified turning my life into a solution for hers. Mom finally spoke, voice low and dangerous. "Claire, you're being selfish." The word snapped in the air like a whip. I didn't shout. I didn't rise. I looked directly at her and said, "No one asked what I wanted. You just assumed I was the solution to your problems. I'm not." The silence afterward was deafening. No one touched their food. Even the kids, who usually squirmed and giggled through dinner, sat frozen with wide eyes. I pushed my chair back slowly. "I'll send you my new address for forwarding mail. Nothing else." Rachel stood abruptly. "You're seriously cutting us off because you didn't want to help your family? That's what this is?" I stared at her, unblinking. Number. I'm cutting you off because helping turned into erasing myself. She opened her mouth again, but I didn't stay to hear what followed. I picked up my coat from the hallway, passed by the photo collage near the door, pictures of Rachel's kids, of Joel at graduation, of my mother and father smiling at events I hadn't been invited to. Not a single photo of me. I drove home in silence, windows half cracked to let the night in. My heart wasn't pounding. It was still. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, opened the voice recorder file I'd saved the week before, and attached it to an email addressed to myself. Subject line, so I never forget. Then I opened the family group chat, scrolled through the memes, the passive-aggressive reminders about birthdays, the photos of Caleb's soccer matches I'd been asked to just Venmo for, and pressed delete. Claire emails herself the voice recording with the subject, so I never forget. Then deletes the family group chat. Peace isn't quiet, it's the absence of guilt echoing in your chest. The morning sun slipped across the wooden floor in long, unbroken streaks. It didn't sneak in through blinds or fight fluorescent bulbs. It simply arrived, soft, warm, and unbothered. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, cradling a chipped mug of tea, watching steam curl upward like it had nowhere else to be. For once, neither did I. My journal sat on the windowsill, faded from years of being moved but never reread. I hadn't touched it since high school, but one line still clung to memory. One day, I'll live somewhere no one barges in without knocking. I had written it in the margins of a geometry worksheet. Now, all these years later, it wasn't wishful thinking. It was a fact. Outside, the raised garden beds were still half empty, but the soil smelled clean. I crouched, dug my fingers into the earth, and planted tomato starters with slow, careful pressure. There was something oddly sacred about it, placing life into the ground with no expectation, just faith that it would stay. By midday, the sun was warm enough to open all the windows. Birds chirped, and the only sound louder than that was my own breath, steady for once. I unpacked in fragments, one shelf at a time. The books first, financial planning manuals, dog-eared novels, a small poetry collection I never admitted I liked, then the photo frame I'd kept hidden at my last apartment. Not a family, just me, hiking solo at Olympic National Park. I looked so unbothered. I set it in the hallway. Later that afternoon, Liam knocked gently on the back gate. "I've got the connectors," he said, lifting a plastic bag and a coil of tubing. "Thought we could finish the irrigation line before sunset." He didn't ask to come in. He didn't assume. We worked in the yard quietly, side by side, connecting lines and testing pressure. I admired how he didn't fill the silence with small talk. Still, as we adjusted the hose valve, he glanced over. "My dad wanted me to take over his landscaping company," he said. "Big commercial jobs, clients with checklists instead of gardens. I hated it." "So you left?" I asked. "Eventually." He looked up toward the pine trees, their shadows long across the lawn. "Took me 3 years and a panic attack to realize doing what you're good at isn't the same as doing what gives you peace." We didn't say much after that. He left just before twilight, dust on his sleeves, smile easy. That night, I curled up on the porch swing with my laptop. The blog post had been in drafts for weeks, half-edited paragraphs, a title I almost deleted more than once. How I Bought My Peace. I clicked publish, no tags, no name, just words. I closed the laptop and sat still for a long time, listening to crickets, to wind threading through the trees, to the steady hum of being alone and okay. Sometime past midnight, my phone buzzed with a new blog comment. Username, RainyMom77 Heck. It's hard to stop asking for help from those already drained. I froze. It wasn't accusatory. It wasn't even dramatic. Just quiet. Too quiet. "Rachel?" I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my contacts. Mom, Dad, Rachel, Joel. I hesitated, thumb hovering, then one by one. Delete, 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 delete. Each name vanished without fanfare. But inside, a pressure I didn't realize I'd been carrying began to lift, like a breath held for years. I set the phone down and stepped outside. The sky was navy blue, stars faint behind wisps of cloud. Somewhere in the neighbor's yard, wind chimes stirred. And then, from just beyond the fence, a familiar voice, low and curious. "Do you ever plan to tell them where you are?" I turned. Liam leaned against the gatepost, not intruding, just present. I looked back toward the house, the lights glowing soft behind the curtains. Only if they learn how to knock first. The ones who used to demand entry sometimes return as strangers who wait at the door. The rain came in thin silver lines, delicate but insistent. It dripped from the porch awning, tapped against the window panes, and pooled gently along the stone path leading to the gate. I had just come in from checking the lavender, soft lilac buds blooming despite the cool weather, when the doorbell rang. I froze. Not the soft knock Liam used, not the hurried tap of a delivery driver. This was different, measured, hesitant. I stepped toward the door, each footfall echoing louder than it should have in a house this quiet. Through the peephole, I saw a blur of rain-damp fabric, a tote bag slung over one shoulder, and two smaller figures beside her. Rachel. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands escaping in wet curls. She wore no makeup, no polished smile, just tired eyes. Beside her stood Mia, her tiny fingers gripping Rachel's hand like a tether, and Caleb, half hidden behind his sister, holding a folded paper towel over something I couldn't see. I didn't move for a beat. Then I opened the door, but didn't speak. Rachel blinked against the rain. "I wasn't sure I was still allowed to knock," she said quietly. She didn't step forward, just stood there, like someone unsure if they were in the right dimension, let alone the right place. I didn't invite them in. I simply stepped aside, just enough for them to stand under the awning, out of the rain. The silence pressed between us like thick fog. Then Rachel reached into the tote bag and pulled out a slightly crumpled folder, job application papers, a resume, and a printout of something I recognized immediately, my blog post. "I applied," she said, offering the folder like a peace offering, not a request, "to the financial training program, the one you wrote about, the one you said gave people a clean slate." I looked down at the folder but didn't take it. She continued, her voice thin but even. "I listed you as the person who inspired the application, not for a referral, just as context." My lips parted slightly, but I still said nothing. Then Mia looked up at me. "Mom said, if we were good, we could see your flower garden." Her voice was soft, almost reverent, like the idea of my garden had become something mythical in their house, a place that existed only in stories. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I glanced past Rachel at the path leading around the side of the house, where the white lavender had finally bloomed fully yesterday. Drops of rain clung to each stem like little glass beads. Rachel shifted slightly. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "I just needed you to know. I used to think you'd always carry us, that it was just who you were. But now I see, you built something because we didn't let you before." She paused, eyes flicking to Mia, then back to me. "I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix it. I just wanted to say it." It didn't sound rehearsed. That's what startled me. No theatrics, no guilt-spiked phrasing, just words, stripped down. I still didn't know if I forgave her. I didn't know if I even wanted to. But something shifted, quietly, the way a door unlatches even if it's not yet opened. I stepped off the threshold, walked to the side gate, and unlatched the old wooden latch. Rain had darkened the wood, and the lavender beyond shimmered. "Mia," I said softly, not turning back. "Want to see the white lavender? It just bloomed. I don't forgive to heal others. I forgive to stop bleeding internally." The Monroe Farmers Market buzzed gently beneath a sky so blue it felt curated. Booths bloomed with local honey, wild flowers, and ripe peaches that left sweet trails on my fingertips. I walked the gravel path like I belonged there, and maybe finally I did. Vendors greeted me by name now. Claire with the lavender, Claire who likes her eggs brown. One woman even held out a bunch of basil before I asked. There was a quiet power in being known for who you chose to be, My tote was half full when I saw the email on my phone, an internal bulletin from the training department at our firm. I tapped it open, scrolling past announcements and deadlines until a familiar name caught my eye. Rachel. She was listed as a new trainee. The photo beside her profile was plain, no makeup, hair back in a clip, eyes unsure. The description beneath was just a sentence. Entering with background in personal budgeting and community organizing. There were no footnotes, no mention of me. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel regret. Just a soft ache, like pressing a bruise that had stopped hurting days ago. That evening, I returned to my cottage, set my tote down on the kitchen counter, and opened the windows. Sunlight poured in sideways, touching the lavender in a golden wash. I checked the mail. Just 2 envelopes and a small card tucked between them. It was hand-lettered in pencil, letters uneven and hopeful. Dear Aunt Claire, I hope your lavender grows better this time. Mom says hi, but only if you want her to. Love, Mia. I traced the words with my thumb. No manipulation, no guilt. Just a child who had begun to understand boundaries better than the adults who raised her. Later, as the sky turned peach over pine trees, I stepped out to the front porch. A small woven basket sat by the gate. Inside, 3 oranges, a sprig of rosemary, and a folded note on craft paper. Picked this morning. Stay warm. The sweet things take time. L. I didn't need more. His presence had always been the kind that asked nothing and offered quiet. I went inside, placed Mia's card beside a folded page from my old journal, the one from years ago, edges torn and ink faded. I deserve quiet. I deserve my own space. Not a manifesto, not a declaration, just a truth I had finally allowed myself to live. I brewed tea with the rosemary, let the scent curl through the house. It smelled of earth, of time, of something that grew slow and stubborn and real. Then I walked to the front windows, unlatched them fully, and leaned into the early summer air. She opens her windows, breathes in the scent of basil and lavender, and whispers, finally. Beneath the quiet rhythm of a life rebuilt, the echoes of past betrayals finally faded, not because they were forgotten, but because they no longer dictated the future. What her family once called selfishness was, in truth, the first honest act of self-respect she had ever made. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Some victories aren't loud. They're lavender blooming in the soil you chose.